Commander Jake Morrison floated in the observation deck of the Olympus station, watching Earth turn slowly below him. The blue marble looked peaceful from up here, but Jake knew that peace was about to end forever. He had been stationed on this orbital defense platform for 3 years now, and nothing exciting ever happened. Today would be different. Lieutenant Amy Carter sat at her communications console, running through the daily checks. The routine was always the same until her screen started flashing red. Every frequency was lighting up at once. Amy had never seen anything like this in her 5 years of service. She called out to Jake with worry in her voice. "Commander, you need to see this right now." Jake pushed off from the window and drifted over to Amy's station. The readings showed signals coming from everywhere at once. This was impossible. No human technology could broadcast on every frequency simultaneously. Amy's hand shook as she tried to isolate the source. "Play it," Jake ordered. The speakers crackled to life with a voice that was clearly not human. It spoke perfect English, but there was something cold and mechanical about it. The message was short and terrifying. "People of Earth, we are the hegemony. We have watched your species for many cycles. You have grown too dangerous to ignore. You have 72 hours to surrender completely. Submit to our guidance and some of you will survive. Resist and your world will burn. This is your only warning." The message repeated in dozens of languages: Chinese, Russian, Spanish, Arabic, and many others that Amy could not recognize. The voice never changed its cold tone. Jake felt his blood turn to ice as he realized what this meant. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and they had just been given an ultimatum. Down on Earth, Admiral Kevin Hayes was in his office at Pacific Command when every communication device started screaming at once. His aide rushed in with a pale face and handed him a tablet. The same message was playing on every screen, every radio, every phone on the planet. Kevin had served in the military for 30 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The Admiral's secure phone rang. It was the President. Helen Foster's voice was steady, but Kevin could hear the tension underneath. "Kevin, tell me this is some kind of joke." "I wish I could, Madam President. We're getting the same transmission from our deep space monitoring stations. This is real." Within minutes, every world leader was on emergency calls. The message had reached every corner of the globe at exactly the same time. No human technology could do that. Whatever sent this message had power beyond human understanding. Dr. Lisa Grant was in her laboratory at the University of California when her research into extraterrestrial signals suddenly became the most important work on Earth. She had spent years searching for signs of alien life. Now that life had found them instead, and it was not friendly, Lisa ran the alien transmission through every analysis program she had. The signal was coming from somewhere beyond Pluto. The power needed to broadcast across such a distance was enormous. These aliens had technology that made human achievements look like stone tools. General Paul Mitchell received the emergency alert while having coffee in his Colorado Springs office. Within an hour, he was deep underground in the Global Defense Council's war room. Representatives from every major nation were appearing on screens around the room. Everyone looked scared. The Chinese representative spoke first. "Our satellites detect massive objects moving past Jupiter. The radar signatures are unlike anything we have built." The Russian general nodded grimly. "We confirm this. At least 10,000 objects, each larger than our biggest aircraft carriers." Paul felt sick. 10,000 ships meant this was not a small scouting force. This was an invasion fleet designed to crush any resistance. The aliens were not here to negotiate. They were here to conquer. Captain Steve Rogers was piloting a stealth reconnaissance ship near the asteroid belt when his sensors went crazy. Massive objects were moving through space at incredible speeds. Steve had been a pilot for 15 years, but he had never seen anything move like this. The ships were sleek and dark, absorbing radar like black holes. Steve counted the vessels and felt his heart sink. There were too many to fight. Each one was kilometers long and bristling with weapons he could not identify. The human fleet would be destroyed in minutes against forces like these. He sent an encrypted message back to Earth Command with his observations. The alien fleet was real, it was huge, and it was coming straight for Earth. Humanity had less than 3 days to decide its fate. President Helen Foster stood in the Oval Office, looking out at the Rose Garden. In a few hours, she would have to address the world and tell them that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer the masters of their own destiny. An alien empire had given them a choice between slavery and death. Her advisors were arguing about response options, but Helen already knew what she had to say. America had never surrendered to tyrants, and humanity would not start now. The aliens could bring their fleet and their ultimatum, but they would learn what it meant to fight. Humans who had nothing left to lose. The 72-hour countdown had begun. The next 72 hours turned Earth into a giant military base. Every factory that made cars started making ammunition instead. Every scientist who studied peaceful things now worked on weapons. Every person who could hold a gun was given one and told to learn fast. Colonel Danny Price had not slept in 2 days. He was running between secret facilities that most people did not know existed. The Aurora Project had been humanity's most classified program for 20 years. They had been trying to build ships that could travel faster than light. Now they needed to turn those experimental engines into weapons. Dr. Maria Santos led the team working on the Aurora engines. She had spent her whole career trying to unlock the secrets of faster-than-light travel. Her engines could tear holes in space itself. Maria realized those same holes could be used to destroy alien ships if they got close enough. If we can get one of these engines near their fleet, the space distortion will rip their ships apart, she explained to Danny. The problem is getting close enough without being destroyed first. Danny nodded grimly. Leave that part to us. Just make sure those engines are ready to blow. Captain Luke Thompson stood on the bridge of the battleship New York as it joined the growing fleet near Mars. Ships were arriving from every nation on Earth. American destroyers flew alongside Chinese cruisers and Russian submarines that had been hastily converted for space combat. The sight should have filled Luke with hope, but he knew how badly outgunned they were. Engineer Tony Baker was welding experimental weapons onto ships that were never designed to carry them. Mining lasers became long-range cannons. Construction equipment became armor plating. Even civilian cargo ships were being turned into weapons platforms. Tony knew most of these modifications would not survive the first battle, but they had to try something. The work was dangerous and desperate. 3 welders had already died when experimental energy cells exploded. Tony kept working anyway. Every weapon they could add might save human lives when the shooting started. Major Kate Phillips was coordinating the biggest evacuation in human history. Millions of people were moving into underground bunkers and mountain caves. She had 48 hours to hide as many civilians as possible before the aliens arrived. The job was impossible, but Kate had never backed down from impossible jobs. Cities around the world were transforming. London's subway tunnels became weapon storage areas. New York's sewers were packed with emergency supplies. Tokyo's underground shopping centers became command posts. Every basement and cave on Earth was being prepared for war. Ryan Clark worked in a windowless room full of computers, trying to intercept alien communications. Most of their signals were encrypted beyond human understanding, but Ryan was finding patterns. The aliens talked about humans like they were insects to be stepped on. They had done this to hundreds of other species. They call it pacification. Ryan reported to his superiors. They have conquered 846 different species. We would be number 847. The intelligence was terrifying but useful. The aliens expected quick victory because no species had ever fought them successfully. Every other race had surrendered after seeing the size of their fleet. Humans were about to be the first exception. Dr. Carlos Rivera was working with pieces of an alien probe that had been studying Earth for months. His team had finally managed to crack it open without destroying the technology inside. What they found changed everything. The alien power systems were incredibly advanced but had a critical weakness. They drew energy from quantum fluctuations in space itself. Carlos realized that if they could overload those systems with enough electromagnetic interference, the alien ships might lose power completely. Their shields run on the same power source as their weapons, Carlos explained to the military commanders. If we can disrupt their quantum tap, everything shuts down at once. Admiral Kevin Hayes was planning the most desperate military operation in human history. Instead of waiting for the aliens to reach Earth, he wanted to attack them near the asteroid belt. The plan was insane, but waiting for the enemy to choose the battlefield was even more insane. We use the asteroids for cover and hit them with everything we have, Kevin explained to the fleet commanders. They expect us to cower near Earth and wait for them. We're going to surprise them instead. The human fleet was pathetically small compared to the alien armada, but it had advantages the invaders did not expect. Every human ship carried nuclear weapons. Human captains were trained to think independently instead of following rigid orders. Most importantly, humans were willing to die for their home in ways the aliens could not understand. Captain Linda Davis was preparing her destroyer Phoenix for what would probably be its last mission. Her crew of 97 men and women knew they were probably going to die, but none of them asked to be transferred. They had families on Earth, and they would fight to protect them. Lieutenant Commander Sam Johnson was loading his cruiser, Boston, with every nuclear warhead they could find. The missiles were old and primitive compared to alien technology, but Carlos Rivera's research suggested they might be exactly what humanity needed. The electromagnetic pulse from nuclear explosions could disrupt alien power systems the most. Desperate preparation was happening on Luna Base. Commander Beth Rogers had turned the moon's industrial facilities into a massive weapon factory. Mining equipment designed to move lunar rocks was being converted into kinetic launchers. If the aliens got past the fleet, the moon would become humanity's last line of defense. President Helen Foster was writing the speech that would define humanity's response to the ultimatum. She had studied every great speech in human history, from Lincoln at Gettysburg to Churchill during the London Blitz. This speech needed to unite not just America, but all of humanity. As the deadline approached, alien ships were detected passing Jupiter's orbit. They were coming fast and would reach the asteroid belt in less than 18 hours. The human fleet moved to intercept them, knowing they were flying into almost certain death. The preparation time was over. Humanity had done everything possible to get ready for war. Now they would learn if courage and determination could overcome superior technology. The fate of the human species would be decided in the cold darkness between Mars and Jupiter. Every person on Earth watched the sky and waited for news from the fleet. Children were told stories about brave heroes fighting monsters. Adults prayed to whatever gods they believed in. Everyone understood that tomorrow would either bring victory or the end of human freedom forever. The day Earth would answer with fire was about to begin. The first shots of the war were fired near the dwarf planet Ceres, deep in the asteroid belt. Captain Linda Davis watched her targeting screen as alien ships appeared like dark thunderclouds against the stars. Each enemy vessel was 10 times larger than her destroyer Phoenix, But Linda had something they did not expect. She had desperation and a crew willing to die for their home. "All ships, this is Phoenix Actual," Linda broadcast to the human fleet. "Remember what we're fighting for. Remember who we're protecting. Make every shot count." The human ships scattered among the asteroids like minnows hiding from sharks. This was the series gambit that Admiral Hayes had planned. Use the rocks for cover and strike fast before retreating deeper into the belt. The aliens had superior firepower, but humans knew every crater and shadow in this region of space. Lieutenant Commander Sam Johnson aboard the cruiser Boston launched the first human attack of the war. His nuclear missiles streaked toward the alien formation, primitive weapons against an advanced civilization. The aliens barely noticed the incoming warheads until they detonated and sent electromagnetic pulses racing across their fleet. The effect was immediate and shocking. Alien shields flickered and died as their quantum power systems overloaded. For the first time in centuries, hegemony warships were vulnerable to conventional weapons. Sam's crew cheered as their follow-up barrage of kinetic rounds punched through. Enemy armor. Commander Alex Turner led a squadron of human fighters in a desperate charge against a massive alien dreadnought. His pilots knew this was a suicide mission, but they flew anyway. Alex's fighter was hit by alien fire and started spinning out of control. Instead of ejecting, he aimed his damaged ship at the enemy bridge and accelerated. The explosion when Alex's fighter hit the alien command center lit up space like a second sun. The massive dreadnought went silent and began drifting powerless through the asteroid field. Other human pilots saw what Alex had done and followed his example. One by one, damaged fighters became guided missiles aimed at alien weak points. The alien commanders were horrified by what they were seeing. In 800 years of conquest, no species had ever deliberately crashed their ships into hegemony vessels. The idea of sacrificing individual lives for collective survival was completely foreign to them. They had never fought an enemy that seemed to welcome death in battle. Dr. Jennifer Lopez was monitoring the battle from Earth Command, analyzing every piece of data that came back from the fleet. She noticed something crucial about alien tactics. They fought as individuals within a strict hierarchy, always waiting for orders from above. Humans fought as a team, with every captain making independent decisions based on changing conditions. They can't adapt fast enough, Jennifer reported to Admiral Hayes. Our people are thinking faster than their command structure can respond. We need to keep hitting them before they can reorganize. Captain Brad Williams commanded the heavy cruiser Constitution when he received the order to implement the virus upload. Tech specialist Helen Murphy had created a computer program designed to infiltrate alien networks through their communication systems. The problem was getting close enough to upload it without being destroyed. Brad's ship charged straight at the alien formation, taking massive damage from energy weapons that could slice through human armor like paper. His crew kept fighting even as sections of their ship were blown away. Helen worked frantically at her console, trying to establish a connection with alien systems while explosions rocked the bridge around her. "Got it," Helen shouted over the noise of battle. "Virus is uploading now." Brad smiled grimly as another blast tore through the Constitution's hull. "All hands, prepare for ramming speed. We're going to give these aliens something to remember us by." The Constitution's final charge took out an alien command ship and uploaded Helen's virus into their fleet network. Within minutes, the computer program was spreading through hegemony systems like a digital plague. Alien ships began firing on each other as their targeting computers malfunctioned. Communication breakdowns left entire squadrons without orders. First phase of the battle was costing humanity dearly. Over half the human fleet was destroyed or badly damaged. Brave crews like Brad Williams and his people were dying to buy time for Earth, but their sacrifice was not in vain. The aliens were bleeding too, and more importantly, they were learning to fear human determination. Captain Eric Stone brought his damaged cruiser behind a large asteroid to assess the situation. His navigator Sophie Clark was trying to plot a course through the chaos while Weapons Officer Kyle Brown counted their remaining ammunition. They had enough firepower for one more attack before they would be forced to ram an alien ship. "Captain, I'm reading massive power fluctuations in the enemy formation," Sophie reported. "That virus is really messing with their systems." Eric nodded and opened a channel to the surviving human ships. "All vessels, this is Stone. The enemy is confused and vulnerable right now. We hit them with everything we have left, then we get out of here and regroup." The battered human fleet regrouped for one final assault. Ships that could barely fly limped forward to join the attack. Crews that should have been evacuating their damaged vessels stayed at their posts instead. This was their moment to strike back at the invaders who thought they could enslave humanity. The attack caught the aliens completely off guard. Human ships appeared from behind asteroids and unleashed every weapon they had left. Nuclear warheads detonated against alien hulls. Kinetic rounds punched through weakened armor. Damaged human vessels rammed into enemy ships in final acts of defiance. When the shooting stopped, both fleets were badly mauled. The aliens had lost nearly a quarter of their advance force, something that had never happened before in their long history of conquest. The humans had lost most of their ships, but they had proven something important. The hegemony could be hurt. More critically, the battle had been broadcast throughout the galaxy on the aliens' own communication networks. For the first time in centuries, conquered species saw the mighty hegemony fleet retreating from a battle. 3 alien ships were actually destroyed by primitive nuclear weapons. The message was clear. The invaders were not invincible. On distant worlds, enslaved populations began to whisper about the humans who had drawn first blood against their oppressors. Resistance movements that had been crushed decades ago started to stir again. The galaxy was beginning to remember what freedom looked like. Admiral Hayes received the battle reports with mixed feelings. His fleet had been devastated, but they had accomplished their mission. The aliens now knew that humans would fight instead of surrendering. More importantly, the rest of the galaxy knew it too. The main alien fleet was still coming toward Earth, with overwhelming numbers, but the first engagement had changed everything. Humanity had fired the opening shots of a galactic rebellion. Other species were beginning to rise up against hegemony rule. The war was spreading beyond Earth's solar system. President Foster addressed the world again as news of the battle reached every corner of the planet. "Our brave men and women in space have shown the universe that humans do not bow to tyrants. We have drawn first blood against an empire that thought itself invincible. Now we prepare for their response, knowing that we fight not just for Earth, but for the freedom of every thinking being in the galaxy." The day Earth answered with fire had begun, and the flames were already spreading to the stars. Dr. Nathan Brooks was monitoring galactic communications from his station deep beneath Colorado when he detected something extraordinary. The alien networks were buzzing with reports from across the galaxy. 3 species that had been conquered decades ago were rising in rebellion. The human example was spreading like wildfire through space. "Admiral, you need to hear this," Nathan called out to Kevin Hayes. "The Zentari system just went dark. The hegemony garrison there has stopped responding to commands. Same thing is happening in the Kulf sector." Kevin felt a grim satisfaction as he listened to the reports. Humanity's desperate stand was inspiring others to fight back. For the first time in centuries, the hegemony was facing multiple rebellions simultaneously. Their empire was starting to crack. The aliens responded to these uprisings with overwhelming force. War Commander Thexhai arrived in the solar system with the main battle fleet over 8,000 vessels strong. This was a veteran of 200 conquered worlds who had never known defeat. He intended to make humanity an example that would crush all future resistance. Colonel Janet Moore was overseeing the deployment of humanity's last desperate weapons. The ghost ships were automated vessels packed with nuclear warheads and guided by simple computer programs. Each one was programmed to ram the largest alien ship it could find and detonate its entire payload. They looked like normal cargo ships. On sensors, Janet explained to the fleet commanders, "The aliens won't know what they really are until it's too late. We can get maybe one good surprise attack before they adapt." Captain Eric Stone had managed to repair his cruiser Constitution. Enough to fight again. His crew had patched hull breaches with metal plates and prayers. Navigator Sophie Clark was plotting courses through the outer planets while Weapons Officer Kyle Brown counted their pathetically small supply of remaining missiles. "Captain, alien scouts are approaching Saturn," Sophie reported. "Main fleet is about 6 hours behind them." Eric opened channels to the surviving human ships scattered throughout the solar system. There were fewer than 200 vessels left, facing an enemy force 40 times larger. The smart thing would be to surrender and hope for mercy. Eric had never been accused of being smart. "All ships, this is Constitution. We're going to show these aliens what happens when you threaten Earth. Use the planets for cover and hit them with everything you have. Make them pay for every mile of space." The running battle through the outer planets became legend among human survivors. Captain Eric Stone led his tiny fleet in a deadly game of hide-and-seek among the moons of Saturn and Jupiter. They used gravity wells to slingshot around planets at impossible speeds, striking alien formations from unexpected angles. The aliens had superior technology, but humans had grown up in this solar system. Every asteroid field and gravitational anomaly was familiar territory. Eric's ships appeared from behind Titan, launched their missiles, and disappeared into Saturn's rings before the enemy could respond. Mining engineer Pete Anderson had spent the last 3 days placing nuclear charges throughout the asteroid belt. What had once been humanity's mining operation was now the largest minefield in the solar system. Pete's charges were hidden in ordinary-looking rocks that would detonate when alien ships passed nearby. The minefield worked better than anyone had hoped. Alien vessels trying to take shortcuts through the asteroid belt triggered massive explosions that destroyed entire squadrons. The careful formations that had conquered hundreds of worlds were broken apart by hidden bombs disguised as space rocks. On Earth itself, the civilian population refused evacuation orders and demanded weapons instead. Dr. Rachel Kim was leading teams of volunteer scientists in converting industrial equipment into improvised weapons. Car factories were making armor-piercing rounds. Chemical plants were producing explosives. Even children were helping by carrying ammunition to the defenders. The siege of Earth began when alien forces reached the inner solar system. Orbital bombardment platforms took position around the planet and began targeting major cities. But humanity had turned every inch of their world into a fortress. Surface-to-orbit missiles, hastily converted from space launch systems, rose to meet the alien attack. The Luna Cannon was Commander Beth Rogers' masterpiece. She had used the moon's industrial facilities to build a massive kinetic weapon that could launch streams of accelerated debris at incredible speeds. The first test shot punched through 3 alien dreadnoughts like they were made of paper. "Target the command ships first," Beth ordered her crew. "Take out their leaders and the rest will be confused." The psychological impact of the Luna Cannon was as important as its destructive power. Alien commanders who had spent centuries conquering primitive worlds watched in horror as their most advanced warships were destroyed by what appeared to be a crude projectile weapon. They began to realize that human ingenuity was more dangerous than advanced technology. War-Commander HFY was experiencing his first military setback in a career spanning 4 centuries. His fleet was being picked apart by an enemy that should have been crushed in the first hour of battle. Every tactical manual in the hegemony said that primitive species surrendered when faced with overwhelming force. Humans seemed to fight harder. When the odds got worse, the turning point came when Captain Roy Martinez led a desperate mission aboard the experimental ship Defiance. The vessel was equipped with humanity's first successful faster-than-light drive based on technology stolen from the alien probe. Roy's mission was to strike directly at hegemony supply lines and force them to divide their attention. The Defiance jumped to hyperspace just as alien forces were closing in on Earth's orbital defenses. Roy and his crew emerged near a massive alien logistics hub that was supplying the invasion fleet. The facility was lightly defended because it was supposedly safe behind enemy lines. "All right, people, we get one shot at this," Roy announced to his crew. "Load every weapon we have and aim for their fuel storage tanks." The attack on the supply hub was devastating. Roy's ship destroyed months of carefully stockpiled supplies in a single strike. More importantly, the attack proved that humans now had faster-than-light capability and could strike anywhere in the galaxy. The hegemony's rear areas were no longer safe. General Victor Kane was coordinating Earth's surface defenses as alien ground forces attempted to land. The invaders expected to face scattered resistance from a primitive military. Instead, they encountered a planet where every building was a fortress and every civilian was a potential warrior. Alien troops that landed in major cities found themselves trapped in urban warfare against an enemy that knew every street and alley. Human defenders used sewer systems and subway tunnels to move unseen. Rooftop snipers picked off alien officers while improvised explosives destroyed their vehicles. The aliens were trained to fight conventional military forces, not an entire population in rebellion. Children threw rocks at alien soldiers from hidden positions. Elderly civilians used hunting rifles to harass supply convoys. Even pets seemed to have joined the resistance, with dogs and cats somehow always getting underfoot at the worst possible moments for the invaders. Dr. Michelle Adams achieved perhaps the greatest psychological victory of the war when she successfully hacked into hegemony communication networks. Instead of military intelligence, she broadcast human war songs, poetry, and speeches directly to the alien fleet. The enemy commanders were disturbed by humanity's apparent joy in the face of impossible odds. Young pilot Chris Lewis became a symbol of human resistance. When his damaged fighter was shot down over Washington, instead of ejecting, Chris aimed his burning aircraft at an alien command center and crashed directly into the facility. The explosion destroyed the entire enemy headquarters and killed their sector commander. The death of a hegemony leader in combat was unprecedented. For 8 centuries, their commanders had directed battles from safe positions far behind the front lines. The idea that an enemy pilot would deliberately crash into a command post was incomprehensible to the alien military mind. News of the commander's death spread throughout the galaxy faster than the hegemony could suppress it. On dozens of worlds, enslaved populations realized that their supposedly invincible rulers could die just like anyone else. The rebellions that had started with humanity's example began to spread beyond anyone's ability to control. War Commander HFY requested reinforcements from the hegemony high command, but was told that no additional forces were available. The Empire was fighting 17 separate rebellions across the galaxy, and every available ship was desperately needed to maintain control. For the first time in their history, The hegemony was overextended. President Foster made another address to the world as reports came in from across the solar system. We have shown the galaxy that freedom is not a gift from the strong to the weak. Freedom is seized by the brave from the tyrannical. Today we fight not just for Earth, but for every species that has ever dreamed of liberty. The battle for Earth was far from over, but humanity had already achieved something remarkable. They had broken the hegemony's aura of invincibility and inspired a galactic rebellion. The flames of freedom were spreading from star to star, and nothing would ever be the same again. The galactic situation was spinning out of control for the hegemony as more species joined the rebellion every day. Captain Roy Martinez and his crew aboard the Defiance had struck 6 more supply bases across the galaxy, proving that human ships could appear anywhere without warning. Each successful raid inspired new uprisings on worlds that had been peaceful for decades. War Commander Vex High received increasingly desperate reports from across the Empire. The Zentari had captured their orbital shipyards. The Kulth Rebellion had spread to 3 neighboring systems. Most shocking of all, the Vegan Collective had declared independence after 500 years of hegemony rule. The humans had lit a fire that was consuming everything. How can primitives cause this much chaos? Vex High demanded of his tactical officers. They have no advanced technology, no superior numbers, nothing that should threaten our empire. His aide, a young officer named Kethfer, hesitated before answering. Commander, perhaps their strength is not in their technology. They fight as if death holds no fear for them. They inspire others to do the same. Vex High struck his aide for suggesting that primitive emotions could overcome hegemony superiority. But deep inside, he was beginning to understand that this war was unlike anything in his experience. The humans were not fighting to win in any conventional sense. They were fighting to prove that resistance was possible. Captain Oliver Green had taken command of the reformed human fleet after Admiral Hayes was killed in the battle for Earth's orbital stations. Oliver's ships were reinforced by vessels from 3 allied species who had broken free from hegemony control. The combined fleet used hit-and-run tactics that the rigid alien hierarchy could not counter effectively. We hit them fast, we hit them hard, and we disappear before they can respond, Oliver explained to his multinational crew. Our job is not to destroy their fleet. Our job is to prove that they can be beaten. The psychological warfare was working better than anyone had expected. Hegemony forces throughout the galaxy were reporting discipline problems as their troops began to question orders. Some alien soldiers were even defecting to join the rebellion, bringing valuable intelligence about enemy weaknesses and battle plans. Dr. Stephen Parker was working on humanity's most desperate gambit yet. The Scorched Earth Protocol was designed as a final threat that would force the aliens to negotiate. Rather than allow Earth to be conquered, humans would detonate the planet's core using a chain reaction of nuclear weapons placed deep in oceanic trenches. The explosion would create a gravitational anomaly that would destroy everything within 10 million kilometers, Stephen explained to President Foster, including their entire invasion fleet. They can have a dead planet and a destroyed armada, or they can accept our terms. The threat was not a bluff. Humanity had already demonstrated their willingness to die rather than submit. The nuclear charges were in place and ready to detonate on presidential command. Earth would become a weapon of such destructive power that it would eliminate both the planet and everyone trying to conquer it. General Victor Kane was amazed by the transformation he saw in human society. The same species that had spent centuries fighting each other over borders and resources was now completely united against the alien threat. American soldiers fought alongside Chinese troops. Russian engineers worked with Japanese scientists. All human differences seemed insignificant compared to the struggle for species survival. The most remarkable change was in the civilian population. People who had never held weapons before were learning to fight with deadly efficiency. Grandmother Helen Murphy, who had created the computer virus that damaged the alien fleet, was now teaching children how to build improvised explosives from household chemicals. Young pilot Chris Lewis had become a legend throughout human space after his sacrifice in Washington. His final words broadcast on all frequencies as he dove. His burning fighter into the alien command center were simple but powerful. Tell my mom I kept my promise to come home. I'm just taking some aliens with me. The phrase taking some aliens with me became the unofficial motto of human resistance. Soldiers painted it on their weapons. Civilians wrote it on walls. Even children sang songs about Chris Lewis and his promise to his mother. The aliens could not understand why humans found death in battle so inspiring instead of terrifying. Captain Julia Roberts was leading the first human exploration fleet beyond the solar system, but not to claim territory. Her mission was to make contact with other species fighting for their freedom and offer them support. The idea of conquest had become foreign to humanity. They were now liberators instead of conquerors. Engineer Mike Taylor was designing new ships specifically for supporting rebellions rather than traditional warfare. His vessels carried medical supplies, weapons, and communication equipment for resistance movements. Most importantly, they carried human advisors who could teach other species the tactics that had proven effective against hegemony forces. The arrival of human ships and rebel systems caused celebration throughout the galaxy. Species that had fought alone for decades suddenly found themselves part of a growing alliance. Human tactical advisors taught alien rebels how to use improvised weapons and guerrilla warfare. More importantly, they taught them that courage was more powerful than advanced technology. Dr. Amanda Foster, daughter of President Foster, was establishing refugee camps for species fleeing hegemony retaliation. Entire populations were abandoning their home worlds rather than submit to alien rule. The camps became centers of resistance planning and coordination between different rebel groups. War Commander HFY made his final attempt to crush human resistance by targeting Earth's major population centers for complete destruction. If he could not conquer the humans, he would eliminate them entirely and use their extinct civilization as an example to other rebels. The bombardment of Earth was designed to kill every human on the planet. The attack failed when human orbital defenses proved more effective than anyone had imagined. Luna Base had been converted into a massive fortress bristling with kinetic weapons and missile launchers. Commander Beth Rogers and her crew destroyed half the bombardment fleet before the aliens could retreat to safe distance. More importantly, the attempted genocide backfired politically. Species throughout the galaxy that had remained neutral were horrified by the hegemony's willingness to exterminate an entire civilization. Systems that had been considering surrender to avoid destruction instead joined the rebellion out of moral outrage. The final confrontation began when HFY himself led a desperate assault on Earth's surface. The war commander had decided that only personal victory over the human leadership could restore hegemony prestige. He would capture President Foster and broadcast her surrender to the entire galaxy. The assault on the White House became the most famous battle of the war. Secret service agents fought alongside Marine guards and civilian volunteers to protect the president. Even White House staff members joined the fighting, using everything from kitchen knives to fire extinguishers as weapons against alien soldiers. President Foster refused evacuation and instead broadcast live updates of the battle to the world. Her calm voice describing the fighting in her own residence inspired millions of people to continue resisting. When alien troops finally reached the Oval Office, they found it empty except for a note on the president's desk. You came looking for surrender, but humans do not know that word. We have prepared a different welcome for you. Please enjoy your stay on Earth. It will be brief. The White House exploded as nuclear charges placed throughout the building detonated simultaneously. War Commander Thexhai and his elite guard were vaporized along with the most famous residents in human history. President Foster had already moved to a secure bunker, but the symbolic victory was devastating to alien morale. The death of their Supreme Field Commander in what should have been a routine capture mission sent shockwaves through the Hegemony High Command. For the first time in 8 centuries, they began seriously considering negotiations with the species they had intended to conquer. Captain Roy Martinez received new orders as he prepared for another strike mission. Instead of attacking supply bases, he was now carrying diplomatic messages to the Hegemony capital world. Humanity was ready to discuss terms, but only from a position of strength. The message he carried was simple and direct. Humanity demanded complete withdrawal of all hegemony forces from the solar system, recognition of human independence, and most importantly, the right of all species to choose their own government. The aliens could accept these terms or face an eternal war that would eventually destroy their empire. The rebellion had grown beyond anyone's ability to control. Over 50 species were now in open revolt against hegemony rule. The empire that had dominated the galaxy for 8 centuries was crumbling under the weight of its own oppression. The fire that started on Earth was burning across the stars, and nothing could put it out. Humanity had kept their promise to answer with fire, but they had given the galaxy something even more powerful. They had given it hope. The Hegemony High Council met in emergency session for the first time in 3 centuries. Their empire was collapsing as rebellion spread from system to system like wildfire. What had started as a simple conquest of one primitive world had become a galactic revolution that threatened everything they had built over 800 years. Supreme Chancellor Vexthron read the reports with growing horror. 73 species were now in open revolt. Their most loyal client races were declaring independence. Entire sectors had gone dark as local populations overthrew hegemony garrisons. The humans had done more than resist conquest. They had inspired the collapse of an empire. How is this possible? Vexthron demanded of his advisors. We have the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Our fleets are invincible. Our armies have never known defeat. How can primitives cause this destruction? The answer came from an unexpected source. Captured human documents had been translated and distributed throughout the High Council. One phrase appeared repeatedly in human communications: live free or die. The concept was so alien to hegemony thinking that their scholars had spent weeks trying to understand it. Captain Oliver Green led the combined rebel fleet in the final assault on the hegemony's main stronghold in the solar system. His force included ships from 12 different species, all united by humanity's example of resistance. The diversity of the fleet was its greatest strength, as each species contributed unique tactical advantages. Remember, we're not here to destroy them, Oliver broadcast to his multinational crews. We're here to prove that they can be defeated. Victory is not about conquest. Victory is about freedom. The battle for the solar system's outer defenses lasted 3 days and changed the nature of galactic warfare forever. Instead of the rigid formations favored by hegemony commanders, the rebel fleet fought as independent units supporting each other spontaneously. Human tactical flexibility had become the standard for all free species. Dr. Nathan Brooks intercepted the most important communication of the war when Hegemony High Command ordered all their forces to withdraw from human space. The Empire was cutting its losses and abandoning the solar system to save resources for fighting rebellions elsewhere. Humanity had won its independence through pure determination. The withdrawal was not a retreat, but a desperate attempt to salvage what remained of hegemony power. Supreme Chancellor Vexthron had decided that holding the empire together was more important than conquering one stubborn species. It was the first time in 8 centuries that the hegemony had abandoned a conquest. President Foster addressed the world from the rebuilt White House as alien forces departed the solar system. Her words were broadcast to every rebel stronghold across the galaxy, carried by human ships that had become symbols of hope for oppressed populations everywhere. Today we have proven that no empire is too powerful to fall when free people stand together. We fought not for territory or resources, but for the simple right to determine our own destiny. That right belongs to every thinking being in the universe. The human victory inspired the final wave of galactic rebellion. Species that had submitted to hegemony rule centuries ago rose up simultaneously across dozens of star systems. The empires. Communication networks collapsed under the strain of coordinating responses to so many simultaneous uprisings. Captain Julia Roberts received new orders as commander of humanity's first interstellar diplomatic mission. Her ships would carry not weapons but teachers, doctors, engineers, and advisors to newly liberated worlds. Humanity's role in the galaxy was changing from warriors to mentors. The transformation was remarkable to witness. The same species that had spent millennia fighting each other over scraps of territory was now dedicated to helping others achieve freedom. Human ships became mobile universities, teaching former slave species how to govern themselves and defend their independence. Engineer. Mike Taylor's designs for rebellion support vessels proved so effective that other species began copying them. His ships carried everything needed to start and sustain a resistance movement: weapons, medical supplies, communication equipment, and most importantly, human advisors who understood how to fight superior technology with inferior resources. Dr. Amanda Foster's refugee camps evolved into permanent settlements as displaced populations chose freedom over returning to hegemony-controlled worlds. These communities became centers of learning where different species shared knowledge and developed new technologies based on cooperation rather than domination. The Galactic Freedom Foundation was established on the ruins of the White House, with President Foster's daughter as its first director. The organization's mission was simple: support any species willing to fight for independence and provide assistance to newly liberated worlds trying to establish democratic governments. Foundation's motto was inscribed in the rebuilt Oval Office in dozens of languages: "We stood, we fought, we endured. So can you?" The phrase became the unofficial anthem of free species throughout the galaxy, a reminder that courage was more powerful than technology. War Commander Thexai's replacement, a younger officer named Quintal, attempted one final assault on Earth, using the hegemony's most advanced weapons. The attack failed when human orbital defenses, now reinforced with technology from a dozen allied species, destroyed the entire invasion fleet before it could reach the inner solar system. The defeat was so complete that it marked the end of hegemony expansion forever. No alien commander would ever again volunteer to attack the solar system after seeing what happened to their predecessors. Humanity had become synonymous with military disaster in hegemony planning documents. More importantly, the failed attack demonstrated that the rebellion had grown beyond human leadership. Species that had learned from human example were now capable of defending themselves independently. The galaxy no longer needed Earth's protection because it had learned to protect itself. Captain Roy Martinez commanded the first joint human-alien exploration mission to regions of space that had never known hegemony rule. His diverse crew was searching for species that might be threatened by future expansion, offering them alliance and protection before conquest could begin. The mission discovered something remarkable in the galaxy's outer rim: dozens of species had heard about humanity's resistance and were preparing their own defenses in case the hegemony ever reached their worlds. The human example had spread even to civilizations that had never been contacted by either side. The hegemony tried desperately to maintain control over their remaining territory, but the damage was irreversible. The empire had been built on the myth of invincibility, and humanity had shattered that myth beyond repair. Subject species everywhere now knew that their rulers could be defeated by determined resistance. Supreme Chancellor Vexthran was overthrown by his own advisors after the catastrophic failure of the Earth campaign. The new leadership attempted to negotiate with the rebels, offering limited autonomy in exchange for returning to the Empire. The response from every liberated world was identical: complete independence or continued war. The final collapse came when the hegemony's home system declared independence from its own government. Even the species that had created the empire were tired of endless warfare against populations that refused to stay conquered. 8 centuries of galactic domination ended not with a great battle, but with a bureaucratic memo dissolving the imperial administration. Humanity's role in galactic affairs stabilized as teachers and protectors rather than conquerors. Human ships patrolled trade routes to prevent piracy and slavery. Human advisors helped establish democratic governments on newly liberated worlds. Human scientists shared knowledge freely with any species that wanted to learn. The transformation was so complete that children on Earth grew up thinking of war as something that happened in history books. The same species that had nearly destroyed itself with nuclear weapons became the galaxy's most trusted peacekeepers. Violence was still sometimes necessary, but only to protect the innocent from those who would exploit them. Dr. Jennifer Lopez established the first interstellar university on Luna Base, where students from hundreds of species came to study human philosophy, science, and most importantly, the history of resistance against oppression. The curriculum focused on peaceful solutions to conflict, but also included courses on guerrilla warfare for species still fighting for their freedom. The day Earth answered with fire became a galactic holiday celebrated by free species throughout known space. Children learned the story of how one small planet had defied an empire and inspired the liberation of the galaxy. The lesson was always the same: courage and determination could overcome any odds. The hegemony still existed as a shadow of its former self, controlling perhaps a dozen systems compared to the thousands it had once dominated. It survived only because free species chose mercy over revenge, proving that liberation was more powerful than conquest as a foundation for galactic civilization. Humanity had kept its promise to answer with fire, but the flames they lit had become something greater than weapons. They had become the eternal fire of freedom that would burn in every corner of the galaxy for as long as thinking beings dared to dream of liberty. The war was over, but the revolution would never end.